Alrighty, party peoples of the interwebs, Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler, back up in Canada behind the Iron Rainbow. Today I'll be doing a vlog breaking down the highlights of Joe Biden's interview with George Stephanopoulos, which aired last night. It was Joe Biden's moment to reassure everyone out there that he is not a bumbling, senile, demented old man, possibly with Parkinson's disease or Lewy body syndrome, that he is fully fit, not just to win the election, but to serve another 4 years. It was a marathon, 22-minute interview with George Stephanopoulos. Here are the highlights. The first highlight is George Stephanopoulos touting this interview to be unedited, uncut, straight from the horse's mouth or straight from the senile president's mouth. 22 minutes, as though that is somehow an accomplishment of its own. They're playing like Rocky-esque Eye of the Tiger music as George Stephanopoulos says this. It was a whopping 22-minute interview, uncut, unedited, and Joe Biden still looked like a bumbling, senile buffoon.
Earlier this afternoon, we taped the 22-minute interview. There are no cuts. No edits. We have not touched it. At this pivotal moment in the presidential campaign, here it is. Now, something I noticed, and I'm not sure if you all noticed it, but I suspect many of you did, is that whenever Joe Biden was asked a hard question that was sort of preloaded with a "you are a demented, senile old man," he does this smile, this sort of half smile where he's like trying to reassure you that the question is preposterous, that he's in control, that he will laugh and smirk at your suggestion that he is unfit to serve. And he did it at least 3 times. Here's 3 of those highlights.
Let's start with the debate. You and your team have said you had a bad night, but this seems to have fit into a pattern of decline that has been reported on recently. New York Times had a headline on July 2nd, Biden's lapses are said to be increasingly common and worrisome. Are you more frail?
No.
I know you spoke.
Keep my schedule.
I know you spoke with your doctor after the debate. What did he say?
He said, he just looked at me and said, "You're exhausted."
You know, the heart of your case against Donald Trump is that he's only out for himself, putting his personal interest ahead of the national interest. How do you respond to critics who say that by staying in the race, you're doing the same thing?
Oh, come on.
He then tries to reassure George Stephanopoulos that this isn't anything of a recurring problem. This is not signs of Lewy body dementia or Parkinson's disease, that this was just a bad debate night, and he refers to it as a bad episode. He was exhausted even after days of rest. Yeah, he just had a bad night, but it was something of an episode that he went through. Alrighty, people, if that satisfies your concerns as relates to his ability to serve for another 4 years, you're idiots. There's nothing else to say.
Mr. President, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the debate. You and your team have said you had a bad night, but your friend Nancy Pelosi actually framed the question that I think is on the minds of millions of Americans. Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It was a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night.
But part of the other concern is that this seems to have fit into a pattern of decline that has been reported on recently. New York Times had a headline on July 2nd, Biden's lapses are said to be increasingly common and worrisome.
But look, I'm not a baby, I'm not a child who's going to sit there and only make fun of Joe's clear dementia, because it's not something to be made fun of, except for the fact that the media and everyone in the American political institution has been lying to the American people for years now. So I'm not making fun of Joe being senile or demented. I am highlighting only that it has been an insult. It has been spitting in the face of the American people, lying to you, telling you that there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden. Then he gets up there with that debate. Not just a bad episode, not just a bad night, the culmination of senility, dementia, hitting the American public in the face, and they try to paint it off as one bad night when quite clearly it has been known, they have been lying to you, they have been hiding it, it can no longer be hidden, and now they're lying to you again, just passing it off as one bad night when everybody knows this emperor has no clothes. But this vlog, this analysis, is going to be more than just the apparent senility of Joe Biden. If you paid attention to what he said by way of policy in that interview, I think he actually took credit for expanding NATO not once, but twice in that interview.
Are you the same man today that you were when you took office 3.5 years ago?
In terms of successes, yes. I also was the guy who put together a peace plan for the Middle East that may be coming to fruition. I was also the guy that expanded NATO. I was also the guy that expanded NATO. I was also the guy that expanded NATO.
Once upon a time, it was known that expanding NATO is an act of aggression to Russia. Once upon a time, when people explained away Russia's invasion of eastern Ukraine as a response to NATO expansion, we were called right-wing lunatics, we were called Putin apologists, we were called conspiracy theorists. Here in this interview, Joe Biden confirms as a matter of policy that he takes credit for NATO expansion, i.e. looking to trigger World War III with Russia.
Also the guy that grew the economy. All the individual things that were done were ideas I had or I fulfilled. I moved on. And so, for example, well, that was true then. What's Biden done lately? Today, just announced 200,000 new jobs. We're moving in a direction that no one's ever taken on. I know you know this from the days in the government. I took on Big Pharma. I beat them. No one said I could beat them.
And Joe Biden claims that he took on Big Pharma and beat them, only if he means beat them off or beat them to the bank as to who was going to cash their check fastest. Can you imagine this guy claiming that he beat Big Pharma for whatever the heck that means? Because I have yet to understand what it could possibly mean. But yeah, he beat Big Pharma, he expanded NATO, and he's been off fighting wars all over the world.
I know you spoke with your doctor after the debate. What did he say?
He said, he just looked at me and said, "You're exhausted." I said, "Look, I have medical doctors travel me everywhere, every president does, as you know. Medical doctors, some of the best in the world, travel me everywhere I go. I have an ongoing assessment of what I'm doing. They don't hesitate to tell me if they think there's something wrong."
I know you said you have an ongoing assessment. Have you had a full neurological and cognitive evaluation?
I get a full neurological test every day with me. And I've had a full physical. I had, I've been at Walter Reed for my physicals. Yes, the answer is.
I know your doctor said he consulted with a neurologist. I guess I'm asking a slightly different question. Have you had the specific cognitive tests, and have you had a neurologist, a specialist, do an examination?
No one said I had to. No one said, they said I'm good.
Would you be willing to undergo an independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results to the American people?
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day. Every day I have that test. Everything I do. Not only am I campaigning, but I'm running the world. And that's not how it sounds like hyperbole. But we are the essential nation in the world. Madeleine Albright was right. And every single day, for example, today, before I come out here, I'm on the phone with the Prime Minister of, anyway, I shouldn't get into detail, but with Netanyahu. I'm on the phone with the new Prime Minister of England. I'm working on what we're doing with regard to, in Europe, with regard to expansion of NATO and whether it's going to stick. I'm taking on Putin. Every day, there's no day I go through, there are not those decisions I have to make every single day.
And you have been doing that, and the American people have been watching, yet their concerns about your age and your health are growing. So that's why I'm asking, to reassure them, would you be willing to have the independent medical evaluation?
Watch me there's a lot of time left in this campaign. It's over 125 days.
So the answer,
make a decision.
The right answer right now is no, you don't want to do that right now.
No, I've already done it.
And Joe's explanation for why he won't submit to an independent cognitive evaluation, it's so laughably stupid. The only way they think it can work is if they think their supporters, their followers, are laughably stupid. And the problem is, a lot of them are laughably stupid, or just at this point saying, tell me who to vote for, and I'll vote for them. Joy Reid, I'm looking at you.
Y'all just tell me who the nominee is going to be. Let me know when you guys are finished fighting amongst yourselves who I got to vote for in November to keep Hitler out the White House. That's all I want to know. Who I got to vote for to keep Hitler out the White House. Y'all do your thing. Play in traffic all you want in front of these Republicans, acting a fool in front of these people instead of privately declaring your stuff. But don't text me no more, because I'm not taking no more of these texts. Just let me know when you guys are finished figuring it out, Democrats, because I know y'all the freak out people. Go ahead and freak out. Have your conversation. And then let me know who I got to vote for to keep Hitler out the White House. That's it. I'm done. Oh, and by the way, if it's Biden in a coma, I'm going to vote for Biden in a coma. I don't even really particularly like the guy. A lot of his policies, don't like him. He's not Donald Trump, right?
But Joe won't submit to an independent cognitive evaluation because nobody said he needs to. Everybody said he's good, except for the fact that he has bad episodes. He gets distracted because Trump is yelling at him, and he doesn't even know if he even watched his own debate. Oh yeah, he goes through cognitive tests daily, and to the extent that he wakes up and goes to sleep, he thinks he's passed it.
Did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no.
And the amount of times he just loses track of what he says and fades off, ending it with anyway, anyway.
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day. It's a bad episode. I have a cognitive test every single day.
Did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no. I have a cognitive test every single day. Even when I was answering a question, even though they turned his mic off, he was still shouting. And I let it distract me. But I realized that I just wasn't in control. I have a cognitive test every single day. We have, anyway. For example, today, before I come out here, I'm on the phone with the Prime Minister of, anyway, I shouldn't get into detail, but.
It's unbelievable that he thinks that this interview is going to quell the concerns of the general public, taking credit for war.
Wouldn't a clear-eyed political calculus tell you that it's going to be much tougher to win in 2024?
Not when you're running against a pathological liar. Not when he hadn't been challenged in a way that he's about to be challenged. Not when people...
You've had months to challenge him.
Oh, I sure had months, but I was also doing a hell of a lot of other things, like wars around the world. But I was also doing a hell of a lot of other things, like wars around the world. Like keeping NATO together, like working, anyway.
Taking credit for the expansion of NATO, purportedly taking credit for having taken on and beaten Big Pharma. My goodness, if you want to talk about someone with a narcissistic, godlike complex, this is the embodiment of it in real time. And then he actually has the audacity to say that if the Lord Almighty calls on him to drop out of the race, then he'll do it. But failing that, he's in it to win it. Holy cows, this guy is out to lunch, and he doesn't realize that he forgot his lunch at home.
And the question on so many people's minds right now is, can you serve effectively for the next 4 years?
George, I'm the guy that put NATO together, the future. No one thought I could expand it. I'm the guy that shut Putin down. No one thought could happen. I'm the guy that put together the South Pacific Initiative with AUKUS. I'm the guy that got 50 nations, out, not only in Europe, outside of Europe as well, to help Ukraine. I'm the guy that got Japanese to expand their budget. For example.
And then when George presses him on other Democrats pressuring Biden to drop out, and Biden goes on to say how he spent hours on the phone reassuring them, talking with them, not realizing that it's not normal that he should be spending hours on the phone reassuring people that he's not so demented he should drop out of the race. He thinks that's a good thing. I spent hours on the phone reassuring people I'm not demented. There you go, Joe. Keep on running. Stay in the race. We need you to stay in the race. Hunter needs you to stay in the race because his part in his commutation probably depends on it. Oh yeah, and by the way, Hunter Biden is off advising Joe Biden on whether or not to drop out of the race, and he apparently is reassuring him, stay in the race, Dad. You can do it.
I've spoken to all of them in detail, including Jim Clyburn. Every one of them. They all said I should stay in the race. Stay in the race. None of the people said I should leave.
But if they do?
Well, it's like, they're not going to do that.
You sure?
Well, yeah, I'm sure. Look, if the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I get out of the race, the Lord Almighty's not coming down. These hypotheticals, George,
But it's not that hypothetical anymore. I grant that they have not requested the meeting, but it's been reported.
I've met with them. I've met with a lot of these people. I've talked with them regularly. I had an hour conversation with Akeem. I had more time than that with Jim Clyburn. I spent time with many hours, off and on, the last little bit, with Chuck Schumer. It's not like I had all the governors.
I agree that the Lord Almighty is not going to come down, but if you are told reliably from your allies, from your friends and supporters in the Democratic Party, in the House and the Senate, that they're concerned you're going to lose the House and the Senate if you stay in, what will you do?
I'm not going to answer that question. It's not going to happen.
And then after a grueling 22 minutes, the interview abruptly ends with Joe's creepy whisper to George Stephanopoulos, because after 22 minutes, they exhausted all the questions of relevance. 90 minutes proved to be too much for Joe Biden to stay on his feet. So 22 minutes sitting down, taking softball questions from the Clinton fixer, George Stephanopoulos. Well, I guess that is what it is, although I strongly suspect the Clinton fixer, George Stephanopoulos, was not conducting this interview in order to allow Joe Biden to redeem himself. He was doing it so that Joe Biden can finish sinking himself, because if you thought Joe Biden was senile and demented after last week's debate, you still think that. But if you watch this guy now and he somehow still thinks he's up in the polls and does not believe the polls and doesn't think anybody's going to call on him to drop out of the race and doesn't think people are calling on him to drop out of the race right now, you are dealing with someone who is both senile, demented, and wickedly detached from reality.
You've heard me say this before. I think the United States and the world is at an inflection point where the things that happen in the next several years are going to determine what the next 6-7 decades look like. And who's going to be able to hold NATO together like me? Who's going to be able to be in a position where I'm able to keep the Pacific Basin in a position where we're at least checkmating China now? Who's going to do that? Who has that reach? Who knows all these? We're going to have, I guess, a good way to judge me is you're going to have now the NATO conference here in the United States next week. Come listen. See what they say.
Mr. President, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
But that's it. Those are the highlights from the 22-minute grueling marathon of an interview of Joe Biden by George Stephanopoulos. I think it tells everybody what they already need to know. There is going to be infighting galore, because my prediction still stands. The nominee will not be Joe Biden. The only question is, who's it going to be? I don't think it's going to be Kamala Harris either, which means I think there's going to be wild, wicked, and dirty infighting between Michelle Obama, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, and yes, Satan herself, Hillary Clinton. We will see, but that is the analysis. If you like what I do, you know what to do. Make sure to drop a like in that thumbs up bar down there. Drop a comment. Share my channel. Make sure your notifications are turned on. And whenever a video of mine comes up, just make sure to engage with it. Let the algorithm know. Viva Frei on Rumble. Viva Frei on Twitter. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. On Locals for the most above average community anywhere out there. I'm sweating like an absolute sweating pig, even though I'm told pigs don't sweat. But more important than anything, get out there, exercise, eat healthy, sunlight, talk to people in real life, and now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
Well, what I want to get at is, what were you experiencing as you were going through the debate? Did you know how badly it was going?
Yeah, look,